Welcome everyone to a Good Vibes Gaming preview discussion, and John, you got to go to EGX, and I don't even know if I'm fully aware of that convention, but hey, they had Sonic Frontiers there and PAX West did not. So, you lucky British boy, you actually got to go hands-on with Sonic Frontiers for roughly an hour, correct?
That's right, yeah. So basically the Sonic Frontiers demo is timed to 15 minutes. And the first time I went in, my headphones weren't working. So they were fiddling around with that for around 2 or 3 minutes. And they said to me, like, considering you wasted some time, you may as well just play the demo again. So I got 2 shots of that demo then. And then the TikTok booth also had the Sonic Frontiers demo for some reason. So there was a big Sega booth for Sonic Frontiers. Then TikTok had it as well. So I played it over there. And then I sneaked back at the end of the day and played it again at the Sega booth. So yeah, in total, around an hour of Sonic Frontiers gameplay.
And was it all new, or did you repeat some stuff?
Yeah, it is very interesting. I guess we'll get into what the actual gameplay's like as we keep going, but basically there's a small tutorial section at the beginning, which is always going to be the same no matter what you do. So you're always you're learning the combat, you're learning how to move, that's going to be the same. But once you get out into the field, you can really decide what you want to do. And it's very reminiscent of, I don't want to say this name because I know it's just it's what everyone likens open worlds to now, but it's very like Breath of the Wild. So you get out into the field and you can go and do the main objective, or you can go and explore and get lots of these collectibles, or you can do these side objectives, or you can go to Cyberspace Levels. There's so much you can do, and you can decide what you want to do, because you can progress in different ways, which is really interesting. Like the first time, I was just kind of getting my hands on the game and really understanding it. Second time, I was speedrunning it to see how much progress I could make. And the third time, I was just exploring. Fourth time, exploring even further. I found Big in his fishing section. But yeah, there's so much you can see. There's no way you can do everything in 15 minutes.
That's pretty incredible. So it's a pretty sizable area. I guess... Let's go with the basic question first. What are the controls like? Is it, because Sonic tries to be pretty simple, but how many buttons are you working with here?
Quite a lot of buttons, to be honest, and you keep unlocking more stuff as you go. So, I guess the general control scheme hasn't changed too much from something like Sonic Forces. I think the feel has, but you're still, you can still jump, you can still stomp, you can still boost, which is a bit different now. Boost is actually on the trigger this time, rather than the X button, because the X button is your melee. If you're in the air, then X is homing attack, but otherwise you're using it to punch people. But yeah, so now Boost is on the trigger. But interestingly, Boost isn't like this invincibility aura anymore. And I don't want to keep comparing it to Breath of the Wild, but it's more like a Breath of the Wild sprint. So while you're boosting, you've got like that little stamina circle, just like Breath of the Wild, and the more you boost, that circle goes down. If you stop boosting, it fills back up. So it's more like a run than it is like an Unleashed and Generation style boost, which is interesting. Because honestly, I was getting a little bit fatigued of that boost formula. It's definitely a lot of fun, but a lot of the time it is just holding that boost button down. Whereas in Frontiers, that's not really the case anymore. There's a lot more actual platforming and thought process behind what you're doing. It's a small change, but it is quite a big one. But to answer your question, apart from that, it is kind of just like the regular jump, the regular homing attack, the boost. There's not a whole lot of new moves beyond meleeing. But there is some hidden stuff, though. Like the Lost World parkour is in here. Which I wasn't quite expecting. So if you jump in the air and then press the boost button, you will, and you go in towards a wall, you'll just start running up it. It doesn't matter what wall this is. And there was one enemy, the first time I battled this enemy is that circle one with the spikes. I'll show some footage here. Basically, the first time I encountered that, I was just punching each layer of its discs off until I got to the top. And that was like a slow way of doing it. Like, it worked, but it was slow. And then the second time, I just sort of ran up and started punching the top. Like, ran up with a parkour and just started punching it. And you were able to defeat that enemy really, really quickly. And I kept finding more and more techniques the more I played, just to do things faster. Like, that circle Cyclone move you've seen a few times?
Yeah.
In a lot of footage, there's this one puzzle section where basically any official footage, they're getting rid of those lights one by one, because there's 3 lights. But what you can do is just circle them all at once. You don't have to do them individually. So as you keep playing, you find these faster ways to do things. And it's a really interesting stretch of what Sonic actually is. Like, it's taking these sort of things we've seen in other games, but doing them quicker and faster. Which is really fun for repeat playthroughs.
That's really interesting because that kind of is the core of Sonic, where you do something for the first time and you're probably not going to be too great at it the first time you play through a Sonic level, but the more you play that level, the more you learn its tricks and what you can do and the little processes you can go through, and you learn it. And this seems to be giving you the space to learn that within the game and not have to play the game again in order to I'm back in this section, so this exact thing, and learning from those past playthroughs. It's all in this playthrough, because I've seen Sega come out and say it's about a 20 to 30 hour game, which seems pretty beefy for Sonic, but considering what you were saying with how much there is to do and go in this area, that might be about right, because they said, I forget how many biomes they said there were, but definitely more than just the one we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this grass one. They've also teased the desert one, which I assume is the second one. But yeah, just this one biome, there's so much you can do. And the main objective of Sonic Frontiers is basically you've got to get a bunch of keys, and you take those keys to get Chaos Emeralds, and use those Chaos Emeralds to become Super Sonic and defeat the boss of that area. That's the general loop of each sort of playthrough. And you get keys in a number of ways. You can just do it by exploring, but Cyberspace, that's the general place you're going to get keys. And you get more keys depending on how many challenges you do. So it's kind of like Sonic Adventure, where basically there's the main challenge, just finish the level, but if you come back to Emerald Coast in Sonic Adventure, there'll be a second objective, being do it in this amount of time, do it with this many rings. It's like that, apart from you don't have to keep replaying. So there was one instance, I think it was my first playthrough, I went through the second Cyberspace level, and I did every objective on my first run. So I beat it in the time limit, I got enough rings, I got all the red rings, and that gave me 7 keys, and that alone was enough just to get the Chaos Emerald. So you can do things really quickly.
Speedrunning is going to be interesting with this one, but I guess let's jump into Cyberspace real quick, because that's been something of a bit of a debate here, because I've seen people this is where you get your green hill, and this is where you get your chemical plant and your other past stages. And I've also seen people say the level design is just exactly like these sections. Is Cyberspace a big deal? Did you feel that as you're going through old hat, I've done this all before, or does it feel a bit more unique?
Yeah, I'll talk about the whole story stuff in a moment, but yeah, just for Cyberspace Levels, it's interesting. It's funny that Green Hill is the first level you play in the game, but the demo doesn't start off with that. The demo starts off maybe after the opening cutscene, I'd say. And I didn't find Green Hill on my first run. Interestingly, Green Hill's right behind you. You can go back and play it. But because you're starting off just after that cutscene and that Green Hill segment, you're not facing it. So you can only go back to it if you turn around and play it. So the first one you'll probably find naturally is Sky Sanctuary. And that one, it didn't invoke another level drastically. It definitely looked like the Generation Sky Sanctuary. But the level design, it didn't feel like a carbon copy of it. However, some Cyberspace levels absolutely are. I will say, they are very Forces-esque, and I don't mean this in a detrimentally bad way. I mean, the music is very Forces. So you've got these lyrical sort of electronica kind of pieces in there, and they sound pretty good. But the general formula of these levels is very straightforward. It's typically these straight moving paths. Interestingly, most of the levels were full 3D. There was one that was 2D, but that was the only 2D segment I saw in my entire demo time. Everything was 3D. But yeah, they are very typical of what you'd expect. But because there's also no boost, no boost with an aura anymore, there's no longer just chains of enemies to run through. So there's lots of homing attack chains, but there were much fewer enemies than I expected, mostly because you're not just meant to be boosting through them anymore.
Interesting. So you have all these keys, you're unlocking all the Chaos Emeralds. I'm assuming you have to get all 7 Chaos Emeralds per area. That's what you were talking. Mm-hmm. Are there a set amount of keys, or do extra keys do other things? Because I think that's the other concern is I can go here and do this thing over here, or go in this direction. But is there a point? Is there something to reward, or is it just for the sake of exploration?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a 100% completionist reward or anything, but I'm pretty sure there are more keys than you need. So there was one Cyberspace level that was locked by keys. So the Sky Sanctuary is basically locked by a gear, and you get the gear by defeating a big enemy boss. And that gets you access to that level. But then the city level was locked by 2 keys. So you could either hang on to those keys and get the emerald, or you can unlock that level and get more keys from that level. So you can really do what you want. You can explore if you want to, and just find keys that way, or you can go to cyberspace. I think the only mandatory cyberspace level would, one, be Green Hill, because that's the intro, which wasn't in the demo really, but the other one is Sky Sanctuary. You've got to do that cyberspace, because that gives you the path to the Chaos Emerald. So I've heard people say you can ignore cyberspace. I'm not sure if that's entirely true for all of them, but for the most part, it does seem like you can.
One of the other things I noticed as you're running through these levels, especially open world levels, so sections, the music definitely seems a bit more low key this time. What's your general feel from the music, going in your different directions, going to cyberspace? Like, what's standing out? What's sort of maybe a bit disappointing?
Yes, I played the game with headphones on. I could hear everything, all the voice acting, all the music, and the cyberspace stuff sounds really good, like really high energy. The open world stuff is very much natural sounds. Like you hear waterfalls, you hear rivers. There's mystical pieces that play every now and then, but it's never like the high energy Sonic pieces you'd maybe expect. And I don't necessarily know if that would have worked in this context. Like if you just hear like this high energy song looping the entire time for an open world, that may become grating. But you know, it just kind of gave to this feeling of mystery. And I've been pretty pessimistic on Frontiers until now, until playing it. I'm really happy with it now. But all the footage I saw, I'm like, everything looks a bit out of place. Why are there just rails in the sky? But when you're running through the environment, those things catch your eye. You're like, how do I get there? And by trying to find the obstacles and paths to get to these things in the sky, you're usually rewarded for it, either with upgrades or keys or anything like that. And so like having this sort of mystical music sort of lingering in the background, it really does just give to this totally different vibe, something that Sonic's never tried before. And I've seen this question asked a few times about the voice acting. So Roger Craig Smith, do you remember that sort of period where he wasn't Sonic and then he came back as Sonic?
Right.
People think he's changed his voice, because from a few clips that have come out that have been filtered quite a bit. From what I can tell, he has not changed his voice. There are definitely points... He doesn't talk that much, to be honest. There's the intro cutscene that you hear in the demo, and there's this one point where he stops and looks to a tower in the distance and goes like, "Whoa, that tower's high. I bet there's a good view up there." But like that's pretty much all you really hear from Roger. But I'd say the tone of the voice acting is definitely more serious. That there's less inflection in his voice now, so they've given him a different voice direction, but it's still Sonic's voice. Like there's one scene where you see Amy in a cage, and she's got this sort of aura around her, and Sonic, he never sounds like he's ready just to, eat a chili dog and get down to business. He just sounds really serious the whole time, and so does Amy. So you free Amy from this cage by finding these collectibles. There's like 3 of them you've got to collect, and then when you give her the collectibles, Sonic's arm turns red, and the cage sucks into his arm. And that gives him the Sonic Adventure 2 bounce, which I'll talk about in just a second. But when Amy's talking too, there's less of this sort of damsel in distress attitude. Like, she doesn't ask for help. She's more like, I think she says something along the lines of, "Tails must be around here too. Be careful, Sonic. Go find him." So it's less of this sort of like tropey nature. That they're taking themselves way more seriously than other Sonic stories. But it doesn't come across as try-hard though, which is a really good balance.
Ian Flynn's pretty good at that because he can definitely up the seriousness, but also still have fun with it. So it's I'm very curious to see his writing and what he pulls off within this game. But yeah, you mentioned a Sonic Adventure 2 style bounce, and I remember you saying upgrades and stuff like that. So do tell.
Yeah. I guess I've only 15 minutes of time per round. There's less to really unlock. But there were 2 moves that I did unlock during the playthrough. So the first one was the Cyclone. That's the circle move you can use. And by the way, with the Cyclone, I don't see this happen in footage, but you can boost while doing it. Like, every clip they've shown, it's just this slow circle you're drawing. You can boost. You can do that really fast. But also, yeah, the Sonic Adventure 2 bounce. So you get the Cyclone by getting an upgrade at the start. You get the bounce by freeing Amy, and her cage thing goes into your arm, and that upgrades Sonic. There is also a skill tree, which seems to unlock a lot more of, like, combat utensils. But the bounce is something I haven't really seen talked about yet. And it's triggered by 2 ways. Either you can hold down B, like keep holding it, and when Sonic stomps, he'll like bounce straight up. Or you can press X and B at the same time, or just go straight into a bounce. B and Y at the same time, I mean. Whoops. Yeah, B and Y at the same time goes into a bounce. And it doesn't quite have the momentum of Adventure 2. It's more like a fixed height every time. So he can bounce. I guess it's more like the Lost World bounce, perhaps. But this can be used either to just sort of hit an enemy, or to like keep your momentum going. Like, let's say you're running, and you go into a bounce, and then go straight into a homing attack. Like, it's just this really good way of keeping Sonic's movement going. Actually, well, you know what? Talking of movement a moment, there was this one really cool moment where I ran over this hill, and Sonic like went into the air, and it was really similar to that segment from Sonic CD, the intro, where he like runs off the cliff and goes into a ball and just sort of like comes out again. It was really similar to that kind of posing. It's just really cool seeing Sonic be more than just this guy who runs in a straight line. Like they really are taking animation into account now, which is awesome.
I never even thought about that as the idea of like, because Sonic CD you have that opening where he's just sort of platforming and going across all these speed things. To actually be able to do a lot of that would be kind of cool. And if they're capturing even a sliver of that, that's unexpected to say the least.
It absolutely is, yeah. There's definitely going to be a lot more to unlock. This is the first 15 minutes, and there's a lot of combat stuff I didn't have that I've seen in trailers. Like, I didn't have that move where Sonic, like, dives through an enemy, or where he does that sort of rapid, you know, those energy blasts from his hands. I didn't see any of that stuff. The only combat stuff I really had was the loop, and just the regular punch. And basically, there's some enemies like the ninja, who is the QB enemy, and you can homing attack them. If you keep mashing X, which is the homing attack button, while you're in the air, you'll just start punching them. Like, you're locked onto them, you just start punching. And you can dodge with RB and LB, which are that's the quick step in just regular gameplay. So it's cool seeing the quick step, like the same mechanic being used in combat as a dodge, because it's the same idea. But like once you dodge, you get this Bayonetta witch time effect, and you sort of like go around them and start punching them again. So I was worried about combat, because combat in Sonic games usually isn't something I want. Like, this isn't the werehog, though. This isn't the slow werehog. This is an extension of Sonic's quick movement in combat.
Okay, well that's good, because I never thought of the werehog. My whole thought was Shadow in Sonic 06, where you just sort of you do that and you do with a few kicks and punches and then move on. It's like that was another big question I had for you is, combat in Sonic needs to be kind of fast, because it gets boring otherwise.
Totally.
Is this maintain that snappiness?
I think it does. Yeah, that ninja enemy I faced, because that's right in the intro bit, so I played that 4 times. And each time I was doing it faster. I was just like punching, dodging, getting some punches in real quick. It feels fast. There's definitely some enemies that I do wonder if they will start to grain, but I think with the upgrades and new moves you get, that'll probably not be the case. So like, there's this one group of enemies where they have this shell on them. And to attack them, you've got to do the side loop to get the shell off, and then start punching them. And like, the first time, that's fine. The 4th time, yeah, maybe not so much. But I think, but like naturally, when you're playing the game yourself, by the 4th time, you'll probably have a bunch of more powerful moves. So you won't be feeling that repetition every time. But I guess there's still a small worry of that. But from what I played, no, I think it's just really fun, quick combat.
Nice. Now, you played on, it was a PC demo they were having you try out.
Yeah, I wish it was the Switch, but no, it's the PC demo, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm probably not getting this game on the Switch. This is probably a PS5 game for me. How did it run, I guess? Obviously, this seems like it's probably going to be optimized with it being on a PC. It's not going to show it have any blemishes, but there's still games that run on PC not very well, so... Yeah, how like any blemishes, like any slowdown, like everything seemed pretty rock solid.
There were some blemishes, so the frame rate was great. Frame rate was really good, as expected from a PC. But there were some visual hitches, and it's just probably because it's an older build. But there's this one point where you defeat the first boss, and then it does like... I'm going to say it again, I'm sorry, but it does a Breath of the Wild thing, where Link comes out of the cave, and then it sort of pans out and shows you the land. You know, it starts like, it pans out and it starts showing you a bunch of the overworld. And during that pan, the grass was like following the camera. Like, it was growing alongside the camera. But I expect that'll be fixed by launch, though. I
saw your tweets just after you finished playing it, and how positive you were. I was like, wait, what?
I was shocked.
I did not expect that, because I'm like you. I've been kind of down on Frontiers, not like written it off completely, but everything they'd shown up to a certain point was just like, this looks really dull. But apparently in gameplay, in practice, it works.
Yeah, I was playing with some industry friends. There was Neil, who does the Western Digital stuff, and also there was Josh from Source Gaming. And when we finished our demo, I like took my headphones off, looked at them, I was like, that was good, right? That was really good, wasn't it? And they were like, yeah, that was great. I couldn't quite believe, was I fooling myself here? But no, it was really, really fun. I'll go over some story details in a moment too, because I don't think everything's out there at the moment.
Yeah, I don't really know much about the story, so...
Yeah, so I'll say how it starts. So I think what's meant to happen is there's like a CG intro, which isn't in this demo, and I think you go through Green Hill. But basically, the way it started for me was Sonic's on the floor, and there's like an AI voice talking to him. That's not Sage. This is a completely different character. And the AI voice says something like, "Oh, he survived cyberspace. No one's meant to be able to do that. Go find the Chaos Emeralds." And Sonic says, "Yo, need a little context here." And you just start running in the world. So there's some mysterious voice talking to you that isn't Sage, who is the glowing lady. And Sage comes along every now and then to try and stop you. She tells you not to get the emeralds, not to like save your friends, and you do save Amy in this. The interesting thing, when you save Amy, you haven't really saved her. So you save her from her cage, but she is in some other realm. So it's like a ghost almost, like she's kind of pixelated and everything. But you manage to protect her at least. But there's a few other things that happen. Like there's the most progress I made was this giant Titan that appeared. And it was like a shonen moment where Sonic was going for its head, starts punching it, he's not doing any damage, and the giant Titan just like puts his arm in the air, smacks Sonic, he goes through a bunch of rocks, goes into a cliff. It's very anime. But like the direction, the tone, it's all really, really good. But the story isn't intrusive though. Like the game gives you so many moments to just do your thing. And it's only really when there's like boss battles that it really ramps up. But yeah, it seems like a great mix. Like, I have so little things to complain about with this. I just had a great time. Although one thing I didn't mention as well is you can actually fine-tune Sonic's movement. If you go into the settings, there's options to make him faster, like to make his base speed faster, to make his boost faster. And the demo has basically everything set at the medium, so you don't necessarily want to ramp everything up to the max, because it makes him a bit twitchy to control for like finer movements. But if you want to, like if you want to speedrun, just turn everything up, try and be agile and move as much as you can in the more precision-needed moments. But yeah, they've made the control feel really good the way it is, but you can make it much faster if you want to.
Wow, I never would have thought I've seen a movement slider for that. It was just how fast you go. I'd probably keep it whatever they set at normal, because I can imagine speedrunners being the ones being like, okay, let's crank this up so we can really like just learn and be as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. There was definitely some more basic puzzles. I mean, again, this is the starting area. And again, Breath of the Wild, there are Korok things, pretty much. And some of them are very much exactly the same as Koroks. Like, there's one puzzle where, you know in Breath of the Wild, where you find, like, a Korok stump, and it gives you the spot, like, to run to? That's in here. So, like, you get on a certain spot, and a glowing area is in the distance. You just got to run there as fast as you can. There's other ones you've got to stand on a bunch of tiles. They're all Korok seeds. But what makes them different to Koroks, though, is they also fill in your map. So the only way to fill in your map, really, is to be doing these puzzles. So it gives you more of an incentive to actually be doing all of these things.
Yeah, rather than, inventory upgrades and stuff like that. So
yeah, and there are inventory upgrades, too. Like, there's one character that you can come to with all the upgrades you've found, and he can either make you stronger, he can make you, like, more life, he can make your stamina, your boost meter last for longer. And I also noticed when running through water that there was an oxygen meter alongside a boost meter as well.
Oh.
There wasn't any area where I had to be under the water, but I imagine though that probably will come into play at some point though.
That'd be cool. Like,
yeah,
going to lakes or getting to like a water area. I can imagine like a water biome or something like that.
Yeah, there's almost too much to mention, to be honest. Like, there's so many fun moments that I was surprised by. And we haven't even really seen that much of the game. They keep showing this grass area. We've seen a little bit of the desert, but clearly there's going to be a lot more to Frontiers. And I kind of hope that they don't keep showing that much. Because just discovering it, like Breath of the Wild, like discovering this stuff for yourself is kind of the thrill of it all. And I had a great time.
I feel like they don't really need to, because I think word of mouth is getting out there. That's getting better. I mean, kind of from you. Like, you have basically convinced me, like, okay, I might need to pick up this game.
Yeah.
Just because that's pretty interesting. And with the Sonic fan picking up and word of mouth spreading, I can see this just naturally becoming kind of a hit. It's like, hey, we've got a good one.
It's nice. It's nice to have that feeling again. I'm not a Sonic hater by any means. I've played every Sonic game in the series, pretty much. Not like Sonic Schoolhouse, but like the majority of them. I think Generations is one of the best 3D platformers out there. Forces greatly underwhelmed me though, and it dampened my hype for this a lot. And after seeing that IGN demo, I was convinced this wasn't going to be good. I thought there was no way, but yeah, getting my hands on it, it's changed everything. This is absolutely going to be a good game.
It feels like Sega didn't know how to properly show off the game.
Yes, yeah, it definitely feels that way.
I feel like they had something, but they didn't know, like, okay, how do we show this and make it exciting?
Yeah, I wish I gave you more big impressions, but unfortunately one of my demos ended when I found him. He's right on the other end of the map, though. And I've seen some footage of him fishing and that, but there's a lot of secrets in here.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. That's awesome. Any other anything else you want to mention about the demo of what you played, or anything that stood out, or is that pretty much cover the basics?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I guess I can talk forever about just the minor things, but I feel like it's just doing a lot right. It's the most interesting Sonic story I've experienced in a long time. The tone is great, the writing feels really good, and just the premise is something totally unique. And I'm very curious, like, how does this all come into play? How does Eggman fit into this? How many other characters are we going to see? And just the way it plays is so unique. I've said before, I've been tired of the Boost era. I loved Unleashed, I loved Generations, and it wasn't just that Forces was underwhelming, it was that I think that formula had been around for 10 years, and I kind of wanted to move on, and this feels like a much more natural evolution. Just the idea of controlling Sonic in a big open world, I think that's going to be inherently fun, and giving you all these little side activities to do, and like feasting on your curiosity. I think this is going to be a hit.
It also sounds like they might have taken lessons from all those past Sonic attempts at, like, all those past Sonic games where they attempted to change up the formula. It's like, okay, what worked here? What can we pull? It's like, because again, you mentioning parkour. It's like, okay, did not expect that to return. That's cool.
It's much more natural too. Like, it feels like you just jump into a wall, you start climbing it. There's none of that sort of clunkiness of Lost World. I will say the cyberspace levels were quite short from what I experienced. They were all around a minute long, which is very Forces-esque, but there are around 50 of them, I think they've said, and they're not the base of the game. Like, open world is the main draw, and they're just kind of there as a cleanser.
It's a bonus stage.
Yeah, I guess as you go on through the game too, I imagine those challenges won't be so easy, so you'll probably be replaying them quite a lot as well, I'd imagine. So yeah, I don't think them being short is necessarily something to be worried about right now.
Nah, that doesn't really concern me at the moment, so yeah. Cool. Well, I think that covers it for our Sonic Frontiers preview discussion. I am very jealous that John actually got to play this, but hey, we only have to wait till November. It's not that long. But either way, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/dvgaming. But even just subscribing to the channel and ringing that bell helps us a ton. And I'm sure we'll have more Sonic coverage, whether it's on Frontiers or past Sonic games, whatever. John's a Sonic boy. He likes his Sonic, so you can expect that. But until next time, bye.
Bye, everyone.